Well, good afternoon, this is Houndog Steve wishing you a very pleasant afternoon and welcome back. Bit of a dull day today, so I thought I'd finish off my inflation video, and it's going to incorporate a little bit about what's going on between Europe and Russia, not necessarily what's going on actually on the ground in Ukraine, which, I'm going to make a little point here that, I was talking to a friend the other day about this, and, unless you are actually in Ukraine, in the Donbass region or Crimea or eastern Ukraine, we will never know 100% for sure that what we're being told is happening in Ukraine is actually happening in Ukraine. I mean, as horrible as it may sound, this could be all just a fictitious war to get to provoke a situation. And I think that situation that we're moving towards is like a 1984 Cold War scenario between the three powers, which would be Asia, Eurasia and Oceania. And bear with me on this, just give me a second to explain this, because I was looking at the dependence of Europe on Russian gas, and it is absolutely staggering the amount of cubic footage of gas that goes from the east to the west. Okay, so I wanted to dwell on this little chart here because it really is, actually quite staggering. And this is dependence on Russian gas. And now this is just gas, this is not oil or any other energy, this is not food, this is not fertilizer, this is just gas. Russia's decision to cut gas flows to Ukraine has once again highlighted Europe's needs to reduce its dependence on Russian gas, as the pricing dispute between Moscow and Kiev appears far from resolution. Now, this is from a little while ago, it's 2007, but I don't think this has changed a whole heck of a lot, and interesting enough, I couldn't find any really up-to-date usages of Russian energy in Europe. But when you look at these countries, Finland 100%, Poland 50%, Czech Republic 80%, Slovakia 100%, Hungary 64%, Bulgaria 100%, Turkey 67%, Greece 75%, Italy 28%, Austria 60%, Germany 42%, France 24%, and Britain 16%. That is a lot of dependence on Russian gas. And if you are that dependent, surely you would not be poking the source of that energy too hard unless it was deliberate. And that's what I'm presenting here, is that this was actually a deliberate move to get a particular outcome. And so when you look at the sanctions that have been placed on Russia by Europe, they are across the board. I've been stunned actually at the level of sanctions. I don't think I've ever seen this kind of shunning before historically. And you have to remember now, the UN, this is the very same UN that put Saudi Arabia as the chair of the UN Human Rights Committee. This from New Europe. Saudi Arabia appointed to chair of UN Human Rights Council. Now, I do realise this is from 2015, September. However, for the UN to appoint Saudi Arabia as the head of the Human Rights Council is just an absolute contradiction in terms. When you look at what's been going on in Yemen and all of the other stuff that Saudi Arabia was involved in, possibly 9/11 connection there, and you put these people, the beheadings in Saudi Arabia without a trial. These are summary judgments issued, by one of the princes or so on and so forth. This is stunning. For one group of people, human rights are not an issue, and yet for another group of people, human rights are the ultimate issue. Now, I'm not saying that there are no human rights abuses taking place in Ukraine. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying here is that this is an unbelievable double standard. And how can you possibly, pontificate over situations when you have Favoritism. This is bias. This is absolute bias. This is bias, okay? Is it unconscious? Don't know. But it is definitely bias. The United Nations report on September the 17th confirmed that Saudi Arabia Ambassador Faisal bin Hassan Trad has been appointed as the chair of the Human Rights Council, despite the country having arguably the worst record in the world on freedoms for women's, minorities and religion. I mean, come on. Isn't that a bit of a sort of, an about face to say that Saudi Arabia can head up the Human Rights Committee, but, Russia has to be completely annexed? So when I was looking at this, when I was looking at the dependence of Europe on Russian gas and the increase in the price of gas and energy spiked 45%. Okay, in March alone, 45% in March alone. Okay, now that is annualized, but still that is a 50% increase in fuel costs that were already high in Europe. And if you don't think that that is going to lead to major inflation, you are sadly mistaken, because that fuel creeps through every possible process you could think of, whether you have to drive to work, or whether you're in manufacturing or cooking or baking, whatever it is, you need energy. From Russia Today, Eurozone inflation hits historic high. Spiking energy prices are the major driver, data shows. Consumer prices in the 19 countries that use the euro currency rose by an annual rate of 7.5% in March, according to data released on Friday by the European Union Statistics Agency. Spiking energy costs are the main factor driving inflation higher, Eurostat said. It's the fifth straight month inflation in the Eurozone has set a record, bringing it to the highest level since record-keeping for the euro began in 1997. The latest reading smashed the 5.9% high set in February. Consumer prices have been surging around the world lately, making it more difficult for people to afford everything from groceries to their utility bills. Data shows food, alcohol and tobacco costs across the Eurozone climbed 5% in March, compared with 4.2% in the prior month, while prices for goods like clothing, appliances, cars, computers and books rose 3.4%, up from 3.1%. Service prices were also up by 2.7% versus the previous 2.5%. Some economists have been raising concerns whether the trade bloc will enter a recession in 2022, after energy prices skyrocketed 44.7% last month, up from 32% in February. Yes, I think you will enter a recession in 2022. European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde said this week that three main factors are likely to take inflation higher going forward. According to Lagarde, energy prices are expected to stay higher for longer, pressure on food inflation is likely to increase, and global manufacturing bottlenecks are likely to persist in certain sectors. Whoa, where have I heard that before? That was Klaus Schwab. He said exactly the same things in his address in Dubai just recently. Fancy that. And on top of that, you have all of the food exports from Ukraine and Russia, the wheat and the fertilizer that goes into Europe. Once these start to ripple through the entire economy, and of course that will affect worldwide prices. Okay, because once these shortages start to show up, these countries, to avoid street riots, will be buying food at any price off the open market, and that is going to drive prices through the roof. And you are also going to be wondering why governments allow commodity speculators, okay, like these Wall Street mob that, here's a little video of what's going on Wall Street. Just check this out. From the New York Post, how Wall Street vultures are looking to make a killing off Russian debt. And here he is, a very sober-looking Vladimir Putin. Wall Street banks and hedge funds, including JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs, are scooping up Russian corporate and government bonds at rock-bottom prices in the hopes of returning a massive post-war profit, according to reports. The risky investments come as other finance giants who specialised in snapping up distressed debt have stayed on the sidelines, noting that Russia has been sanctioned and ostracised from the Western economy because of its brutal military invasion of Ukraine. The sanctions, which do not prohibit Western financial entities from trading in Russian bonds, have reduced demand for Russian corporate and government debt whilst creating irresistibly high yields. That's right. Vulture Capitalism. And in the midst of all of this chaos and supposedly people dying and just the mayhem that is going on in Ukraine right now and Russia, that whole side of the world, and America, Wall Street, is profiting off the very thing that they are condemning. Can anyone see the contradiction in that? So whilst they're applying sanctions to Russia, whilst they are decrying the actions of Russia in the Ukraine, American Wall Street investors are making money out of this situation. And if you don't think that that isn't a huge problem and a huge part of what's going on in the world today, the fact that that is allowed to happen, that these vulture capitalists, and these are not little institutions, these are major, we're talking Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, these are big institutions who are taking advantage of a situation and again will start to upset the balance of power. And they don't have to pay the price of that fallout. You and I do. You and I have to pay the price of the fallout from all of that. So, wow, we are in an uncharted territory right now. Who knows what's going to happen? And again, my predictions are just speculation. I don't know truly what's going to happen. I just know that there is going to be some horrible fallout. Some horrible fallout, and in Europe especially because of the density of population. They're on top of each other in Europe, and boy oh boy, wait and see what happens. It'll be bad enough here in North America, but in Europe it will be intense. So let me ask you this. If you were a strategist and you knew you were that dependent on Russian gas, would you really be poking Russia as hard as you are right now? Especially when, now I'm going to say this right up front, I am not in favour of any kind of war, any kind of hostilities, or any kind of fighting. Okay? And I truly believed, having looked at a little bit of the history of this situation, that all of this could be settled diplomatically. Okay? So, when there was a diplomatic option, why would you jump to beating the war drums when you know that this is going to alienate Europe and Russia? It is going to put basically, on a hot plate those energy supplies, because, how long are you going to take it? Imagine you're in that situation, okay, and someone is waving their dick at you and then wanting your well water, which they're fully dependent on. I think you're going to say, hey, watch your mouth, buddy. Watch your mouth. Because I will cut this off. And if you're going to annex me like this to the point where I don't care about the consequences anymore, I'm cutting you off. So why would you do that? I mean, a child could see the risky nature of that strategy. But if you're going into a 1984 scenario of a sort of perpetual Cold War status, this is ideal. You are going to put Europe on the back foot. There is going to be a state of tension between Europe and Russia. It is going to impoverish the population because the crippling effects of supply shortages and inflation are just going to lower the people's standard of living to an unbelievable degree. And there you go. You bring in mass surveillance because of the war situation. It's perfect, isn't it? And again, I mean, the background, the backdrop of 1984 was very cleverly devised. Where you, like I say, you have this ongoing war that just never really, no one really wins, no one really loses. It just keeps sucking up resources, and it keeps the people under control. this would be ideal for the oligarchs, for the elites, the globalists. And so that, ladies and gentlemen, is where I now think that we are heading, that this is the overall plan to knock everybody into austerity to the point where all you're worried about is surviving. You're not worried about anything that the government's doing. You keep hearing, as they did in 1984, nebulous reports of, conflicts in Africa or India or here and there, border skirmishes and so on and so forth, but nothing can be verified. Because of the way the news was monitored and written and rewritten in 1984. I mean, look how ideal a situation we are to be able to do that in today's world. You can erase history at the blink of an eye, and then rewrite history. Rewrite that page on Wikipedia. I mean, you can't believe the number of things that I have searched for that I know were on the internet and have now been scrubbed off the internet. You can find no reference to them whatsoever, or it's so muddied that you can't find them. So these things do happen, and of course we are now very vulnerable to the erasure. And you can see how again with the sanctions on Russia, I mean they're making Russia a non-country. And again, any strategist will tell you this will drive Russia into a new kind of currency system. They've gone to a gold-backed ruble. They're accepting Bitcoin. This is also going to push them into the arms of the Chinese, possibly the Indians and the Pakistanis as far as manufacturing and resources are concerned. And all of these resources that were going to Europe, they figure it'll take 2 years to find alternate resources, and when we're already in a tight supply situation, I don't think you'll ever be able to do that. Which again is another indication that this was a deliberate, planned move to put us all behind the 8 ball and to put us all in a situation where we will accept austerity. And like I say, we'll be just too busy, scratching around trying to put food on the table, that we won't be questioning anything. And again from RT, Biden makes prediction about Russian economy. Oh yeah, go Brandon, go Brandon. This just goes to show you the state of propaganda and how they are attempting to completely mislead people about what is going on. The US president believes sanctions will set Moscow back 15 years. President Joe Biden boasted on Wednesday that US sanctions on Russia will undo the country's economic gains over the last 15 years and stifle the Moscow for years to come, despite previously admitting that the sanctions have done little to deter Russian President Vladimir Putin. Biden nevertheless unveiled a new round of economic penalties on Tuesday. Joe, please, just take your afternoon nap and leave us in peace. And of course, as we've seen, if you do speak up, when you finally do stand up and say something, you will have your bank account frozen because that is still in force. You will have anything that is on your digital identity, if you fall into that trap, will be cut off. We're in a trap here. We are in a trap here. Now, the upside of this is, I do think that people who live in a rural situation will have it a little easier because we do have food resources around us. Most people up here have a little victory garden going to supplement, and we have the space to be able to do that. And that is going to be essential. But that's going to be almost impossible in the city. And whether it will be allowed, because, this is Freedom 101. Anyway, look out, get that garden ready, and be prepared, as I say, for the next phase. And I'll be interested to see what happens in today's budget, to see how woke that is, because it's an NDP Liberal budget. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe below. And this is Houndog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant afternoon, and we'll talk very, very shortly. See you now. Bye.